So you have finally landed a role in human resources, but wait, you are now an HR department of one, which means you don't have any support, you don't have anyone to go to, and you're trying to figure things out all on your own. Now, let's back things up a little bit and let's figure out how, like, what is the evolution of an HR department of one? How does this happen? Because mostly in larger organizations, you will find more than just one person existing in human resources. And especially in larger organizations, you'll have a recruiting department, a dedicated benefits administration department, you'll have a dedicated performance and learning and development department. But in smaller organizations, I would say maybe 10 to 300 employees, you may find yourself alone and being the only source of HR representation that the organization has. And now you're tasked with doing the payroll, doing the benefits, and making sure that the recruiting is handled. And in many cases, you may need to outsource the different recruiting priorities and those tasks to a staffing agency. You're also responsible for performance management, learning and development, and also being a part of a lot of the investigations that go on within a company. And the evolution of this is that you will be only one person and you'll probably never grow into doing something else within the organization. Oftentimes, an HR department of one happens when maybe someone in the C-suite used to sit in that role and do a lot of HR tasks, but now they are the CFO or the COO, or they've gone off to kind of focus on other things and they just needed that role to be backfilled. So the organization will have some sort of HR representative that they can reach out to and have questions answered whenever they have a question. So let's talk about what your first 30 to 90 days will look like in an HR department of one. Now, I always advise my mentees as well as my coaching clients to 30 to 90 days, just be in absorption mode where you are writing a whole lot of notes and you're trying to figure out how the organization works. You need to figure out who is in the C-suite, not only who's in the C-suite, who are the leaders of the organization, who are the decision makers, who are the key stakeholders, what is their fiscal year, how they structured their budget, and where that money is going for their budget, because you're going to need that for later on, especially when you need tools and resources. So try to avoid coming straight out of the gate asking for this and asking for that and demanding money, demanding bonuses, and all of that other stuff. Take some time to be in absorption mode and learn who it is, who's going to be your allies, and who are going to be your enemies, essentially. This is very strategic and it's very important because a lot of organizations are resistant to change. And they don't want to bring someone in brand new to the organization who is going to bring about all of these changes when they don't even know who you are. So again, use that first 30 to 90 days to get to know the people who you're working with, who's on your team, who's not on your team, and understand or obtain a deeper understanding of how the organization is structured and how they operate. Now, moving on to the next is understanding their goals. What are the goals of the organization? What's their mission? Where do they see themselves in the next 3 to 5 years? Where do they see the organization? Where do they see the human resources department or the HR function? How do they see that playing into the overall goals and outlook of the organization? Now, this is kind of like a part of the first step that I advised you on. But as you're building relationships, get to the bottom of the goals and the things that they want to accomplish within that organization, which leads you into the next phase is now after those 90 days have passed, you need to create a strategy. What is your strategy going to be? What are the critical things that the organization has now expressed that is important to them? How can you bring that to life? How can you implement some change? How can you implement processes and procedures? How can you get their policies on track, get them back into compliance? In this stage, you're going to be creating and building a strategy, and you're going to have enough data collected to figure out how you're going to present that to the C-suite or to the stakeholders or decision makers within the organization. It's very important for you to have those relationships in place and know who you're pitching it to at this stage, because it can make or break your stay at the organization, especially if they do not want change and they want to keep things the way that it's always been for their past 10 years or 20 years or 100 years of existence. So it is important for you to build a strategy and start to kind of pitch it a little bit at a time. Do not throw it all on them at once. You can say, hey, I've noticed that a lot of our new hires during the onboarding process, they have a tendency to be a little bit disengaged. These are the steps that we need to take to amp up the engagement and to help the employees feel as if they are a part of the organization. So you want to do this not only for the onboarding part, you can do it for recruiting, you can do it for benefits portions as well, because in benefits, what are some of the common questions that the employees have when it's open enrollment time? Are the employees even utilizing the benefits? I mean, a company could roll out benefits, but the employees decide not to enroll on it because it's too expensive for them, or the benefits just really aren't benefits. They're actually having to pay more out of pocket rather than just paying cash going to the doctor. So various things that come into play when it comes to you being an HR department of one is, you want to make sure that you're moving very strategically and very steadily throughout the process. And a quick note that I want to make when it comes to your strategy and making a plan and everything like that, make sure that what you're planning is on the top priority of the organization. So you don't want to implement something that's not a priority of the organization. And this is where things can get a little bit frustrating for you, is that when you see things that are wrong, you want to implement change. But that change will only occur if it is a priority within the organization. And again, that could put you in a position of where you're in a holding pattern with the decision makers, because they're not ready to actually move forward with your idea if it's not a priority for them. And you have to think of it in terms of making decisions based off of emotions. And unfortunately, a lot of decision makers make decisions off of emotions. And think about it for you personally. When someone is pitching to you, yes, you need to make a change. How do you make that change in your life? Is it by someone demanding it, or someone stating the facts to you? This is what's going to happen if you don't make that change. Or should it be a little bit more strategic? Should the delivery be a little bit more strategic in order for you personally to make a change in your personal life? And so that being said, a lot of us make decisions based off of emotion, not logic. So when it comes to pitching a new concept or an idea to someone within the C-suite, you want for it to come from a place that hits their emotions, just so it would motivate them to make change throughout the organization. Now, A lot of times, as an HR department of one, as you are sometimes, you feel as if you are treading water a lot of times, or maybe your head is underwater in most cases with day-to-day task, meetings, this being implemented, that being implemented, let's go this way, let's go that way. It is important for you to set aside time for personal growth and to stay on top of the legislative changes that will affect the organization that you're working for. Depending on which state that you're in, you may have local laws to abide by. You'll always have state laws, and you'll always have the federal laws to stay abreast of. And those are important, especially as they impact the organization. Maybe you work for a manufacturing company or a construction company, and there's different safety things that you need to have implemented at the organization. So take some time to join some organizations or to subscribe to some blogs or YouTube channels, of course, to stay on top of how it will affect the organization that you are working for. And that adds value to your role. And unfortunately, in a lot of organizations where there's only one human resources person, it means that the organization hasn't really created a budget or created a space or even has it prioritized. And so you want to make sure that you are a value add to the organization by staying on top of the rules and regulations, and always, furnishing it in the form of a newsletter to the staff to let them know, hey, the Pump Act just came out, or a new poster just came out, and we want to make sure that the organization stays in compliance with this. So here's a newsletter. Just try the best that you can to stay on top of everything, and keep tabs on whatever changes are coming down from the federal government. Because this year, ever since COVID, I feel as if the laws have been changing constantly, and it's super critical to stay on top of those things. So ultimately, I know that it can be very overwhelming to be an HR department of one. You will be responsible for a lot of things. You will wear a lot of hats. You may not ever get a secondary person in the department to assist you with certain tasks. But rest assured, you will be okay. Just try and break down those tasks in digestible portions as much as possible. Try not to get too overwhelmed. I do see a lot of people in this space get burned out due to lack of support, working long hours, and not having a separation from their personal lives and also their professional lives. So you just look out for yourself. Make sure that you're communicating clearly with the decision makers within the organization. Make sure that you build allies, and take your time. There is, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And definitely try not to burn yourself out in this role. If you need support, there's a lot of HR communities out there where you can obtain a lot of support. Plus, I offer mentorship and coaching programs. So that is it from me in this video. If you like what you've heard, I would like for you to click subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.